Welcome to another episode of Done is Better Than Perfect. I'm your host, John Grubbs. Welcome to the show. Now, during this pandemic, I've chosen to take a little bit of emphasis off of these classes and give people a little bit of time to breathe and to think about, well, how we're going to respond to this pandemic. And while doing so, I've created a podcast called Crazy Enough to Win, and it's on all the major podcasting platforms. And for the last couple of months, I have taken a deliberate attempt to promote that platform for that purpose. Now, this platform, this show is about learning. It's about professional development. It's about becoming better as a leader. It's about just improving upon the skills that we already have. And today I'm going to share something very interesting with you. It's called choice architecture. And if you're like most people, you've never heard of choice architecture. What the heck is that? But it's a way to get results as a leader, not as a traditional manager or supervisor. So I want you to think about the song by the immortal Jimmy Cliff. And the lyrics go something like, you thought I was going to sing? There is no way you're going to get me to sing on here. But you may know these lyrics. I can see clearly now the rain is gone. And that song resonates with me because, I've trained hundreds of supervisors. This powerful tool about leadership, this powerful insight about leadership. And the truth is, most supervisors still believe in and adopt, an approach that is more about control rather than influence. And people, it's just not their fault. We, humanity, have been using the same model for management since the early 1900s. And people call this the carrot and stick methodology. I call it Management 1.0. It is the model that we created when we industrialized this country and all the farmers came into the cities to work in factories. What if there's a better way than Management 1.0? Would you be interested? What if there's an easier way? Would you be interested? What if there is a more powerful way to get desired behaviors from your teams? Well, guess what? There is. It's called choice architecture. And as we begin to recover and reopen our attitude towards business and COVID-19, I want you to consider the tremendous opportunity to use this historical moment as a pivot point for leadership in your organization. And we're watching power-hungry politicians attempt to control, and I said control, a human population in America. And we have freedom at our core. Civil liberties are being sacrificed in the name of remaining safe from a virus. And some politicians are getting tremendous resistance because they're attempting to use Management 1.0, the carrot and the stick, instead of something like choice architecture to gain desired behavior. And guess what? They're failing. Just like many supervisors in many businesses all over the country are failing. And if we do experience a second wave of coronavirus, I will go on the record by saying Americans will not be locked down again. And if you desire more opinion on this, you can always listen to the podcast, Crazy Enough to Win. That debate is not the point of this article. Now, think about this idea that I've been teaching and training supervisors for years. I've been teaching managers, I've been teaching executives these concepts, and they come from the work of Richard Thaler and Cass Sunstein in their 2008 book called Nudge. And I highly recommend this book, by the way. They are behavioral economists. Most people have never heard of a behavioral economist. And they use choice architecture and the practice of influencing choice by organizing the context in which people make decisions. Pretty cool, huh? And ironically, this is so funny, the book was written as we entered the 2008-2009 financial crisis. So the applicability of their work is so timely as we recover from this pandemic. And I don't believe any credible definition of leadership would be missing the word influence. In other words, the essence of leadership is influence. The essence of management is control. Choice architecture is rooted in influence and influencing people rather than control. Think of it this way: arranging food in a certain way in a cafeteria to get people to make healthier choices is a common example of choice architecture. And this same thinking can be applied to all facets of human existence, including the point of this show, supervisors at work. I'm going to share a few examples in this broadcast to give you an ability to see and understand the value of choice architecture for your teams. For the past 12 years, I have honed and crafted these tools for manufacturing, for healthcare, for nonprofits, for the petrochemical industry, and even the energy sector. These organizations have benefited from learning how to use choice architecture instead of the good old carrot and stick. And aspiring managers, also known as, supervisors and managers aspiring to be leaders. Aspiring leaders may use default options as a gentle nudge for team members. And here's an example, not a recommendation, so you'll understand the point. I'll go on the record also by saying I'm not an investment advisor. But guess what? Let's say a manager desires more participation in the company 401k match. And she may consider using defaulting to make this happen. And defaulting, it means instead of giving employees the option, she subtly sets the default as in for the match, and they must opt out in order to participate. Defaulting is also effective in terms of employee safety and productivity on the job. This is pretty cool stuff. Don't miss the ending. Let me know if you agree or disagree with this approach. As we go through this, your thoughts are important. So, a second tool in choice architecture is framing. The way you frame something is very important, and behavioral options might be presented in a way that highlights a positive or negative aspect of the very same decision. And this can lead to, get this, changes in how someone might be attracted, and as a result, they may change their behavior. So, in the world of safety management, this might be when a manager highlights a high compliance rate instead of placing emphasis on the few people that are out of compliance. Focus on what people are doing right instead of what they're doing wrong. And in terms of production, this can be on those who are successful with productivity rather than those who are not. So the way you frame something is a very important part of choice architecture. Now here's the third example I'm going to give you, and these are just examples to give you a flavor of what this is about. We can use decoys to encourage behavior. It's another example of choice architecture. So get this, with COVID-19 in the background, a supervisor might post the number of cases or deaths in their community right next to an automatic hand sanitizer dispenser in the manufacturing plant. In the break room, just before they leave, this decoy, the posting, reminds employees to clean their hands before returning to work. And these are just examples to make a point. For the use of choice architecture to be more deliberate as a tool to lead people in the workplace. And it already exists around us in obvious and more subtle ways. Think about this. A flashing light on a curve on a lonely country road is an example to nudge a driver to slow down. And aspiring leaders can learn to adopt this Management 2.0 approach in order to gain desired behavior. And when taught properly, choice architecture opens an incalculable number of options for supervisors and managers. And this is what I've heard from them in my classes. I've heard things like, I was blind, now I can see. Or, wow, this really does make my job easier. Choice architecture is deeply rooted in behavioral economics. Richard Thaler, one of the authors of Nudge, well, he won a Nobel Prize in this field of study. And the key to success is taking the idea out of the academic nuance and translating it into real-world tools that a non-economist manager or supervisor can apply to her own reality. In other words, merely telling someone what choice architecture is and how it works is not enough. They have to develop skills deliberately. And to transition to choice architecture, they have to understand some real-life examples in their own context to help them really grasp it and understand it and apply it to their workplace. And you know what's so ironic? It's so ironic that a most effective utilization of choice architecture is in the field of marketing and sales. Sales professionals, these pros gain an incredible advantage to help a prospect along the buying journey with skills in choice architecture. And I want to conclude with the coronavirus. Sweden. I've podcasted a lot about Sweden. Sweden opted not to have a strict formal lockdown. They didn't lock down their economies like everyone else in the world did. They've had a few more deaths than neighboring countries, but about as many per capita as the United States. And they've had far fewer deaths than some other countries in Europe that had strict lockdowns. So instead of this idea of control, they opted for the 2.0 approach. They made fewer restrictions for Swedish citizens and utilized nudges for social distancing and business occupancy. And the Swedish government employed choice architecture to guide their citizens instead of the heavy hand of authority. They trusted people to do the right thing with just a little bit of guidance to be safe. And the global impact on Sweden is relatively less economically, than it is in the rest of the world. And this will likely lead to Sweden recovering just a little bit faster. So remember, choice architecture is as effective on large-scale problems like the coronavirus just as much as the day-to-day issues faced by a frontline supervisor in a manufacturing plant. And several people have asked for my permission to share my work with others. I not only approve, but I encourage you to share this with everyone that you think might find value. If we can help others during this difficult time, let's make a commitment to do so. How's that for a nudge? Subscribe and slap the bell. Make a comment and let me know your thoughts. Together, we can make the world better, one leader at a time. And the enemy of this show is perfectionism. If you follow this show, you know I'm a recovering perfectionist. And I want you to always remember that done is better than perfect. I'll see you next time.